Starting. Okay, we are live. All right, so hello everybody. It is Ian again with my two friends, Michael Miley. Say hello, Mike.
Live long and prosper.
That's a nice hat there. And all right, so hello everybody. It is Alexander. Hang on, I got some feedback.
No, it's me. I took care of it.
Okay, there we go. Hey, you know, we're live streaming on a lag. There's like a 5-second lag between what we say and what presents on the YouTube channel.
So get your swearing out now.
So anyway, Michael, why don't you start us off this week?
All right. Well, this week, you, the people, voted on Facebook, and you voted for us to discuss foreign policy over economics and trade policy, and that's okay. And that's what we're here to do today. So, Alexander, we were talking about, before you joined us, the differences between Trump and Hillary Clinton's foreign policy, but also their similarities, because there are some places where they overlap, and I thought maybe you could talk about that first, just so that we could not be accused of undue bias.
Yeah, so both of them represent American political or international interests, and both want the United States to be strong, prosperous, desirably. Of course, there will be always matching of such ideas.
But there are some very distinct differences between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton's foreign policy, and I think NATO, especially, you know, because you're here, I think we could talk about NATO first.
Mm-hmm.
Is NATO long for this world? Even if Hillary Clinton is elected, will forces beyond her control vis-a-vis the EU keep NATO as a viable option going forward, maybe 10, 15 years?
It's a dead body that will continue to stink, okay, and make mess around, but not to serve to its purpose, because purpose is really gone.
Well, I think that we can all agree that the Ukraine needs to become part of NATO. That is 100% necessary, isn't it? And there's nothing. There's nothing aggressive about the move of trying to make the Ukraine part of NATO. Not at all.
Or Georgia. Right. Another country that may empower that decaying alliance pretty well.
Right. Okay. So I think before we necessarily move on to what Hillary has said or what Trump has said, let's just sort of give our audience a feel for the direction that American foreign policy has been headed, I would say since the Clintons, or maybe even since Bush Sr. So there's been sort of a policy to mess around, I guess you could say, in the Middle East, and to a lot of people it seems to be completely schizophrenic and bizarre, because it's erratic. We seem to make decisions that you know, our stated goals are not the same thing as what we end up doing, and you know, we side with dictatorships and people that have horrible human rights abuse records, and then we attack other nations that don't necessarily have, you know, they're not the horrible people that we try to paint them out to be. So why don't we just sort of open it up and talk about what we've been doing for the past 30 years as a country?
In my opinion, for this, I will start it really with Clinton, because that's when idea that United States won in the Cold War was finally born, materialized, and then came another idea that we're the sole superpower who can change the world to our like. And consequently, we started to bomb Yugoslavia. That's the Clinton period. Changing regimes wherever we could, attacking Iraq, Libya, and so on. What is said about this, but it was costly, stupid, and didn't provide the United States with absolutely anything to improve life of American people in the country, or to improve image of the country on the international scene.
That's absolutely right. Go ahead, Michael.
So, well, yes, and so we have to talk about then moving forward through Clinton and Bush, which is a definite period of time. into the post-Bush era, if you will, the Obama era, and now what this next sort of period will be. Hillary Clinton, when you talk about her and foreign policy, it's pretty boring, isn't it, Alexander? Because it's the same thing all the time.
Same things. There's not.
Yeah, there really is no deviation from what's been going on. But with Donald Trump, of course, like every other thing that Donald Trump is involved with in this election, it's new, exciting, it's different. I think it scares a lot of people, but it's quite contrary to established wisdom, if you will, which has been sort of the other tagline of his campaign. Ian, if you can share my screen here.
Yep.
I have a video pulled up.
Okay. Go for it.
I'm not sure.
I don't think we'll be able to hear the sound, but go ahead and play the video and tell us what they're saying. There's a whole bunch of nuance to this whole Google Hangout technology
What
thing.
exactly is your relationship with Vladimir Putin?
Can you hear that?
Oh, wow, yeah, I can hear it.
Okay, cool. So
You've cracked the code.
Let's start again.
Let's talk about Russia. You made a lot of headlines with Russia this week. What exactly is your relationship with Vladimir Putin? I have no relationship with Putin. I have no relationship with Putin. But if you have no relationship with Putin, then why did you say in 2013, I do have a relationship? In 2014, I spoke. He has said nice things about me over the years. I remember years ago he said something, many years ago, he said something very nice about me.
You know, that's really the great thing about Trump, if you will. You know, that you know, 2 years ago he said, "Oh, I have a great relationship with Vladimir Putin." But of course, you know, there was no relationship, and it's just hilarious how the media can churn up this stuff and continue to play it. But let me present again.
That's their job.
Continue with the clip, but that's just sort of a brilliant Trump moment there, if you will. But bring me back on here, Ian, if you will.
No, you're there. You're on.
Okay. Can you see me? Can you see?
I can see you. I can see you in your hat and your glasses, and you look fabulous.
All right. Well, okay. Can you see the video?
No.
No, we don't see.
You need to click on screen share. Top left. You got it. You can do it. I know you can do it. Top left, and then click on share on desktop. Oh, whoa, whoa!
Something exciting.
Infinite loop. Okay, there we go. All right, go.
I said something good about him when Larry King was on. This was a long time ago. And I said, he is a tough cookie, or something to that effect. He said something nice about me. This has been going on. We did 60 Minutes together. By the way, not together, meaning he was probably shot in Moscow. Well, he was in Moscow, you were in New York. But that's the thing. No, just so you understand. He said very nice things about me, but I have no relationship with him. I don't. Yet you said for 3 years, 13, 14, and 15, that you did have a relationship with him. No, look, what do you call a relationship? I mean, he treats me with great respect. I have no relationship with Putin. I don't think I've ever met him. I never met him. I don't think I've ever met him. You would know it if you did. I think so. Yeah, I think so.
I don't think I've ever met Vladimir Putin.
No, he never met.
Of course he's never. But look how they make him deny that fact. Look how they make him absolutely disavow this relationship that just does not exist. And you know, so continue here. I keep dropping out to comment, but now I have to screen share.
You're there. You're there. You're dominating the whole thing right now.
So I don't think I've ever met him. I mean, if he's in the same room or something, but I don't think so. Never spoken to him on the phone? I've been in Moscow. I didn't meet him in Moscow. Where? Never spoken to him on the phone? I have never spoken to him on the phone, no. I've spoken when we had the Miss Universe contest a number of years ago. We had Miss Universe in Moscow, in the Moscow area. He was invited. He wanted to come. He wasn't able to come. That would have been a time when I would have met him. But I just want to clear this up, because you did say on 3 different occasions you had a relationship with him. Now you say there's not. Well, I don't know what it means by having a relationship. I mean, he was saying very good things about me, but I don't have a relationship with him. I didn't meet him. I haven't spent time with him. I didn't have dinner with him. I didn't go hiking with him. I don't know. I wouldn't know him from Adam, except I see his picture and I would know what he looks like. Vice President Biden told me this week that Vladimir Putin wants to beat Hillary. And Madeleine Albright said that your victory would be a gift to Putin. And what they're...
Okay.
Now there's quite an interesting statement to make. Alexander, what are your thoughts on that? That this is, in the higher levels of geopolitics, sort of spat.
It's anti-Russian fear-mongering. Go ahead.
What I think he's trying to say, that he is capable to deal with other world leaders. And certainly to deal with Putin, who many people around the world understand as one of the most successful, one of the strongest leaders. And certainly Trump, if he is elected, will have to deal with him. And I have hope that he will be successful because, first, he never expressed any Russophobic feelings as his opponent did. Hillary is obviously a Russophobe. She insulted Putin on several occasions, comparing him with Hitler and so on. Trump is never did this. He has absolutely normal situation for starting relationship with Putin. Certainly he will defend American national interests. Everybody understands it in Moscow. He will be quite a serious person for negotiations. Everybody knows how Trump is a good negotiator. That's pretty simple. And you see, liberal or mainstream media often attacks him on the basis that he will not be able to handle foreign policy. But look at that brilliant move that he did recently while visiting Mexico. Perfect.
Well, I was going to bring us into that.
Such a brilliant move. It was a visit. He met with president. He talked. Well, at this point, of course, it was just, hello, I will be a president of the United States, and we will be working together on some tough issues, and the issues are real. Everybody knows this. And he proved that he will work and defend our national interests, negotiating with world leaders, and doing.
Well, you know, another thought comes to mind if Trump becomes president. Him meeting with Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who has
that's what I'm looking forward
allowed
to.
in his government and in the society in which he is the leader of to sort of have this tacit. You talk about Russophobia. There's Trumpophobia in Canada.
The way I picture that meeting going is Trump is going to walk in and Trudeau's going to hide under the desk, and then he's going to call security.
It seems like an unequal sort of group. But let's continue with the video here, Ian.
All right, go for it.
So.
What you're pointing to is things like your statements about conditioning our commitments to NATO allies, softening the GOP platform on Ukraine, even considering softening sanctions and recognizing Russian annexation of Crimea. They fear that that's going to hurt America and advance Russia's interests. They only fear one thing, losing the election. If our country got along with Russia, that would be a great thing. When Putin goes out and tells about relationship, but he says Donald Trump is going to win and Donald Trump is a genius, and then I have people saying you should disavow. I said I'm going to disavow that. But when Putin says good things, when we have a possibility of having a good relationship with Russia, I think that's good. Bowing to his annexation. We're not going to be bowing to anybody. Hey, George, you know me pretty well. I don't bow, okay? I don't bow. But if we can have a good relationship with Russia, and if Russia would help us get rid of ISIS, frankly, as far as I'm concerned, you're talking about tremendous amounts of money and lives and everything else. That would be a positive thing, not a negative. Even if that means conditioning our commitments to NATO, as you said? No, because you're not going to do that. NATO is going to be just fine, but NATO countries, we have 28 countries, many of them are taking advantage of us because they're not paying. So we're protecting these countries and they're not paying. And when people leave that last part in, everybody agrees with me. I'm all in favor of NATO. I said NATO's obsolete. I was asked a question by one of your competitors, and I said NATO's obsolete because it's not taking care of terror. You understand that. And it turned out I was right. A lot of people gave me credit for that. Then 3 months ago on the front page of the Wall Street Journal, they said NATO to develop a terror division. And somebody who's supposed to be very extraordinary is put in charge of it. That was all because of me. So I was right about that. I was also right about the fact that NATO, we're being taken advantage of by NATO countries. Totally advantage of. Why did you soften the jib?
Well, so again, Donald Trump always with the interesting points about NATO. Let's stop for a moment and discuss his first point, which he's sort of dancing around, and maybe he'll get to it in the video later, making the NATO countries pay more into the NATO system, if you will, or fund it to a greater extent, or in fact altogether, without or with quite a significant reduction in our support financially for it. But here's a question that a lot of people, I think, wonder or seem to hear perhaps when he says that. Doesn't that just mean the end of NATO and maybe a more European EU-based army rather than a North American or North Atlantic rather treaty organization? Is that what we're leading to here, or when he says we need to make the NATO countries pay more, is he in effect saying we should dissolve NATO?
I don't think he's so straightforward, dissolve or not, but negotiate, yes. He's absolutely right. NATO is obsolete. Everybody knows this, but not so many people admit it publicly as he does. Second, we certainly have free riders. We have a lot of free riders on our back who wants a lot from us but doesn't contribute anything or enough. Any alliance should be based on contributions of everybody according to their strengths, of course. However, no free riders, and NATO definitely have free riders, no questions about that.
Oh, yes.
Many Eastern European countries, as previously they were milking Soviet Union, today decided to milk United States. And at one point we were capable to afford this, but now with our 19 trillion national debt and problems with our own country, and why in the world we should allow this free raiding to continue. But generally about the NATO and its future, I believe that it should be a new organization of security and cooperation, and of course that will face many challenges in the future. That should include Russia, that should include China, that should include India. Only with such type of organization we will be able to solve world problems that we're facing, such as ISIS and so on. Because just small, the repairment of a facade of NATO will not save that organization. And without involvement of other serious players, it's not going to be any good. That brings us back to the point that we made, mistake that we made 30 years ago, deciding that we want and we can control the world alone. It's a mistake. It's time to recognize it, and it's time to develop really cooperative relationship with other players on the planet.
All right, let me jump in for a second. I really feel like this whole idea that at one point we could afford it, we could do these things, and now that we have this much debt, we can't really afford it anymore. I think it's just sort of based on a flawed premise, because when you create this relationship where you have these countries that pay ostensibly nothing for defense, and then the United States is going to back all of them, when it goes on for long enough, and it will, because of course the military-industrial complex loves the fact that they are the ones that get to be producing the weapons that get to be shipped all over the place. That is a tremendous benefit to those few people that have enormous sway within Washington. So what happens is that you create a system where when it goes on for long enough, the host country begins to really start bleeding, and then all the other countries are too suckered into this free money that they're getting. And one example that I'll give you is I have a good friend of mine from ASU named Hiromi, and Hiromi's from Japan. And what do you think that my Japanese friend thought about Trump? Before I go on, I'm just curious. What do you think?
Probably skeptical, but it depends, because in all of these countries, in China and Japan, we may find people who actually welcome Trump and those who are afraid of him. It may be both.
That's absolutely true.
I would think there's a certain part of the Japanese sort of cultural mindset that would really admire Donald Trump. So I'm going to say generally positive, vaguely positive.
Well, I don't know if people know this, but Japanese culture is generally pretty conservative. And the parties that dominate tend to be on the Asian spectrum of what is conservative, which is not necessarily the same thing as what you would classify it in America, but culturally they're very conservative. They don't just take in people, you know, you have to be Japanese to be in Japan. Anyway, a little bit off topic. So he was extremely afraid of a Trump presidency, and the reason that he was afraid is because he does not want to stop losing military aid from the United States. Number 1, 2, and 3 reasons that he did not like Trump. And he justified it by saying, look, you guys really messed this up in World War II, and now we've been on life support from you guys for decades and decades. You've pretty much just been defending us from what they consider to be Chinese aggression. And they're terrified of the Chinese, they're terrified of the growth of Chinese influence. And he was a big Marco Rubio fan because he wants to keep the gravy train rolling. He does not want it to end.
Well, Alexander, can I interrupt you, Ian, for a minute and just ask Alexander a question off of what you said? How much of that China, of course, is a growing power, will continue to be a growing power until their enormous credit bubble bursts, at least.
Right. It's close.
Until that point, but you know that could be actually quite far off.
I think they can handle it, but it will happen.
Is there such a thing? Well, this is my question. Is there such a thing, Alexander, of Chinese aggression towards Japan? Is that a founded fear that they might?
Absolutely unfounded, and I hear often attempts of Japanese to rewrite what is called World War II history. That's not we who attacked us in Pearl Harbor. It is Japanese who attacked in Pearl Harbor, and it were Japanese who occupied China, and it's were Japanese who are responsible for Nanking rape and so on. So it is remind me many similar voices in Europe designed to rewrite World War II.
Yeah, but you know Germany does not have that at all. I would say I would say the Baltic nations most less, definitely.
It's there too, but it's less vocal as it is in Japan.
But you have to say, okay, so with Germany, I think that this sort of cultural nihilism, this, you know, the fact that they hate themselves so much to a certain degree, and they're so terrified of their own history, they have taken it too far in the opposite direction. They need to rediscover some sense of national pride, I think, if they're going to survive all of the horrible things that are now going on in Germany on a fairly regular basis. But the Japanese have pretty much done the opposite. When you talk with a Japanese person and you bring up what is your sense of shame for you know, the fact that you were complicit in these horrible acts and war crimes, and they just say, well, you know, a lot of that wasn't as bad as what the history books say, and you know, we don't feel too responsible. We feel like we were threatened from everybody else, and that we had to fight back. And that's sort of the way that they attempt to rewrite it. Koreans as well. I have a Korean friend here. Not too big a fan of Mr. Trump, of course. There's the DMZ zone in South Korea, which is almost entirely American troops, and I don't think they want to see that go at all. And I think that Trump, when we look at, so let's look at the Eastern Asian bloc for a little while. I absorb as much Chinese media as I can in order to maintain my very, very low standard of Chinese. And from what I can hear, most of the mainstream media is hesitantly pro-Hillary. They don't really like her that much, but they don't like Trump at all. And this is the mainstream media. They tend to be very much against him. By the way, Trump in Chinese is Talampu.
What is what I was watching and talking with a bunch of Chinese people recently and asking about Trump. They concerned, some of them worrying, but many actually support. What I noticed, it was my very small sample of conversations. Younger people more willing to support him than older people. And the answer to this situation is simple. He's anti-establishment candidate. And some people in older and mainstream politics, they are afraid where that anti-establishment candidate will lead the United States. So they express that concern where United States will go and so on, because not so many people actually understand him and really plus influence of our mainstream media too.
Right.
Which bashes him all the time, and this type of articles often reprinted in mainstream media in those countries, and they reflect simply on that trend.
Right.
But I don't think, you see, answering to Michael's question, does concern of Japan is justified in regards of aggressiveness of China? Absolutely not. China never attacked, never occupied Japan. It was Japan who occupied and attacked China. And not only in World War, let's recall the war at the end of the 19th century and Japanese aggression against China at that time. So there may be disputes about islands. Yes, they are existing today, and they will continue.
The Ryukyu Islands, those rocks sticking out of the sea.
Yeah, so this type of things will continue, but they will not ever cause a large war between China and Japan. And the reason why there will be no war between China and Japan, it is economic interests of China.
Absolutely.
Chinese are so pragmatic, and investments coming from Japan and technologies coming from Japan, they are not so crazy to have any serious confrontation with Japan. Those for domestic consumption, they periodically may steer anti-Japanese sentiments that they do from time to time, but it's kind of their game that they play.
Yes. Okay. Let's see. What else?
Well, do you want to finish?
I had a talking point, but I forgot what it was. So go ahead, Michael.
Well, let's finish the video here if you want to. Well, again, I'm going to have to do this.
Okay, let's do it. By the way, Torben,
Okay.
Torben made a comment on the Facebook channel. The way you say Schwarzenegger in Chinese is Schwarzenegger. I think it's actually easier than the American way than the English way of saying it. Anyway, go on.
The GOP platform on Ukraine. I wasn't involved in that. Honestly, I was not involved. Yeah, I was not involved in that. I'd like to. I'd have to take a look at it, but I was not involved.
Do you know what they did?
They softened it, I heard, but I was not involved.
They took away the part of the platform calling for provision of lethal weapons to Ukraine to defend themselves. Why is that a good idea?
Look, you know, I have my own ideas. He's not going into Ukraine, okay? Just so you understand. He's not going to go into Ukraine.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You can take it in.
He's already there, isn't he?
Okay. Well, he's there in a certain way, but I'm not there. You have Obama there. And frankly, that whole part of the world is a mess under Obama with all the strength that you're talking about and all of the power of NATO and all of this. In the meantime, he's going away. He takes Crimea. He's sort of, I mean...
But you said you might recognize that.
I'm going to take a look at it. But, you know, the people of Crimea, from what I've heard, would rather be with Russia than where they were. And you have to look at that also. Now, that was under, just so you understand, that was done under Obama's administration. And as far as the Ukraine is concerned, it's a mess. And that's under the Obama's administration with his strong ties to NATO. So with all of these strong ties to NATO, Ukraine is a mess. Crimea has been taken. Don't blame Donald Trump for that. You said we'll do better, and yet we'll have a better.
I will agree with every his word.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, well,
Let's talk briefly about Crimea. Crimea is gone from Ukraine for good, and never will come back. Regardless of president that we have in our office, none of them will be able to return Crimea to Ukraine because there is no way to do that. 95.6% of Crimean people voted for reunification with Russia, returning back to Russia, from where not so good Soviet leader Khrushchev took it and gave it as a gift to Ukraine in 1954. So there is no question that any American president can change the reality on the ground of Crimea. Actually, what is happening recently, many deputies of legislatures from European countries, French, Italians, visiting Crimea, and they see it with their own eyes, and they say, that's the reality, and that's actually democracy that we're going to spread around the world. The story with Crimea, it is a triumph of democracy, when really people decided where they want to be. With the eastern part of Ukraine, of course Russia is not going to invade Ukraine. Why in the world Russia will do that? About lethal weapons, that prohibition of sale. First of all, designed not to continue, not to intensify civil war in Ukraine, because in eastern regions of Ukraine there is a civil war. And if we want peace in Europe, we certainly should do everything to cool it down. And there is only one way to cool it down. It is stop hostility, stop fighting, stop shelling, and agree on a compromise, whatever that compromise will be, in regards of the status of these two regions that de facto today are not controlled by Kiev.
Right.
They may return to Ukraine, but on their conditions. And it has to be compromise reached between these two regions and Kiev. And it has to be negotiations of those two sides.
Right. For those of our listeners who don't know, the Ukraine and Russia, while having somewhat distinct cultures, have always been very, very much linked culturally and economically. And there is a division that exists within Ukraine between the Western, are they Catholic, Alexander?
No, only western part of Ukraine.
Closer to Romania, right?
The western, close to Poland, actually.
Closer to Poland, okay,
Yes,
okay.
more in that direction.
Right.
Some of them Catholics, but some of them Uniats. And what it is actually Orthodox Church in terms of service, but it recognized Pope as their head.
Right.
Central and Eastern Ukraine Orthodox. There are actually two Orthodox churches now in Ukraine. One is considering its head in Moscow Patriarch. Another one believes that they have their own patriarch in Ukraine, but it is not recognized by other patriarchs, and it's a religion.
And I'm sure that's also a part of that East-West tension that you're discussing there. Those two.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Where the patriarch is based is probably very connected to politics as well.
So it's a very culturally fractured nation. As it exists.
Quite fractured. And in its present borders, it's quite artificial because it's a creation of Bolsheviks,
right.
Who decided to enlarge significantly territory of Ukraine. But first, because some of Bolsheviks were Russophobes too, that's no doubt. They wanted to take some territories populated by Russians and give them under Ukrainian control, but Ukrainian control at that point was not a big deal because it's still one country, Soviet Union. However, many parts of Ukraine are not historically, culturally Ukrainian. They are Russian.
Right.
This is what is called Novorossiya, New Russia.
New Russia.
And that's just the fact. Then we have central Ukraine, more true Ukraine, and finally we have western regions where it's very complex because some of them previously were under Austro-Hungarian control.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them were very strongly influenced by Poland. Some of them actually populated more by Moldavians. And finally we have regions with significant presence of Hungarian population. So western Ukraine, it's a very complex region with a lot of complexities, ethnic, religious, and so on. And in its present borders, Ukraine exists only since 1920s, and it's a Bolshevik creation, no doubt about that.
So I think that we've...
Alexander, if you don't mind me interrupting you, Ian.
Go for it.
Alexander, when we talk about these different divisions, religious, social, cultural, ethnic, whatever they are, and Ukraine, as we've pointed out, is a very large area filled with those tensions, is the solution to these problems the American way, so to speak, self-determination, to allow a Novorossiya to vote on something similar to the way the Crimea did, and the breakup, perhaps, of Western Ukraine into smaller nations, or is unification a better choice here?
So you said this is the American option, or you said?
Well, I'm thinking of Woodrow Wilson.
Woodrow Wilson, self-determination.
Because definitely not Obama, who was behind the.
No.
You could even call it the Lenin doctrine of self-determination.
Yeah, definitely. Wilson and Lenin in that case will share their views with some differences, of course, attached by ideologies. But yeah, self-determination. Yeah, it's an option. But it may happen only in case of complete collapse of Ukrainian authorities, which may happen because of economic situation on the ground continues to worsen. And I will not give too much time to the current president and government. Ukraine is still facing very serious challenges, and how it will be able to go with just in matters of domestic issues.
Free chocolate for everybody isn't going to be a winning campaign slogan there.
Hey, they win my vote.
But there is another option for Ukraine. You see, Ukraine could exist and can exist in its present borders without Crimea. Because Crimea is a finished question, we shouldn't even return to discuss it. In respect of Crimea, because of Ukraine. Crimea never will be part of Ukraine, period. It may happen in a such way only if World War III happened and we have new division of the world with whoever left. Because rather than World War III, there is no way to return Crimea back to Ukraine. The rest of the Ukraine, that's a different matter. And the ideal for them not to be too strongly attached to any side, west or east. They should be in a sort of Switzerland of Eastern Europe that is absolutely neutral, trying to trade with Russia, trying to trade with European Union, not joining any military alliances. In that case, within Ukraine, there may be peace. But as soon as Ukraine beginning to lean in one or another direction, confrontation within its own society is inevitable. And Eastern Ukraine proves it now.
Well, you know, as we're sort of drifting across the European continent there, let's talk Turkey. Talk Turkey. And it seems like Erdogan, having successfully...
Is it Erdogan or is it Erdogan?
A coup that he may or may not have engineered himself, is playing both sides of the fence here. And even when he talks to Vladimir Putin, who I don't think there's any dispute is a very, very competent person, surely more competent than, say, an Angela Merkel, even when he talks to Vladimir Putin, I get this sort of sick feeling in my stomach that both sides are being played. That Erdogan is a real slick operator.
Oh, I have no doubt. I think that's
somebody
exactly
not to be trusted. So where do you think, what's the current sort of Russian policy on that?
On Turkey, perfectly understanding that it is not alike, and it's not a friend that Russia is ready to embrace. Neither it is our friend, America.
Well, let's face it. I mean, Turkey has been largely responsible for funding you know, a lot of the turmoil that's currently occurring in Iraq and Syria. And I don't think that Turkey likes the current regime in Damascus and Syria at all. I think that they're completely complicit in trying to force. Oh my God, I forgot his name. What's his name?
Assad.
Assad. Thank you. Wow, it was right at the tip of my tongue. And of course, Russia just kind of went in and just kind of mopped up and left. And I don't think that Turkey likes that one bit.
You see. First of all, Turkey has its own agenda and will continue to have its own agenda. It's not pro-Russian, it's not pro-American, it's pro-Turkish. Erdogan certainly has his own agenda, and he certainly wants to make Turkey an important player in the region. But he is, in a way, a realistic person, and he realizes that in the past he made some mistakes. For instance, shooting down the Russian airplane was definitely a mistake.
Oh, yeah.
He moved back, apologized, because it hurt Turkey economically. No Russian tourists, no Russian market for Turkish fruits and vegetables. It's a big blow to Turkish economy. He understood it. He reversed his position. He's embracing Russia, but he's not going to be Russian ally, some kind of join Russian Eurasian Union or anything of this sort, or create a military alliance of Russia. No. But he will continue to do whatever he is doing. Certainly, attitudes from Russian standpoint about him, he's an important player in the region. We have to take into consideration his position. He's an important economic partner, and for gas pipelines to go to the south of Europe, Turkey is important partner, and will be continued work in this regards with Turkey. However, there will be no illusions that Erdogan is a big friend of Russia or Turkey is a critical ally of Russia. No, it's not Belarus, it's not Kazakhstan.
Right.
Still a different country with its own agenda.
And historically, there have been quite a number of conflicts between those two regions and cultures for quite a while. Not necessarily that they need to boil up again.
And there were other times, because in the fact that Turkey exists today, big role was played by Bolshevik Russia.
Right.
Was Bolshevik Russia pretty much protected and helped to Ataturk in his first years in power, when Turkey was a pariah, defeated country, and Bolsheviks certainly helped them to get out of that situation and put firmer on the ground.
So the next question I would have then is, Turkey and the EU, is that something that would occur, or is the EU effectively on life support and they're waiting for Theresa May?
I don't believe that Turkey ever will become a member of EU. I don't think so.
And does Brexit play a part in that, or?
It's again a game that will be continued to play at least maybe for a decade longer, but Turkey will not be a member of EU.
Right. Will the EU survive in a decade? Is a pretty.
No, the EU would not survive if Turkey became a member, because they're already having lots of problems, essentially with unlimited migration coming in, and that would open up the floodgates, open up the proverbial floodgates, and everybody's going to be popping on up to Denmark and Germany, and they can't do it with the UK anymore, unless of course they find out a way to weasel out of Brexit. But that is just going to completely collapse those welfare states, because, I mean, a lot of those people...
Well, I think there's no doubt that the EU is, like I said, I think the EU is on life support, and I think the moment that the Theresa May or whoever is in charge of Europe, the moment they activate that Article 50 provision, that will be the end of the EU.
That will be the end, absolutely.
Or do you think, Alexander, that it may survive officially without the United Kingdom as a full playing partner?
Who may survive? European Union?
I was saying to Ian that I think the moment that Article 50 is invoked in England, that will be the end of the EU, effectively.
Not necessarily completely, but the EU as we knew before, certainly, because EU will have to go through serious reforms of itself. Because there are some good things in EU and there are some bad things in EU.
I would say mostly bad.
These realizations are coming more and more openly and seriously now. The idea that EU can be governed from Brussels by unelected and not responsible really to anybody bureaucrats will not stay for long, probably. So we will return to some kind of new model of EU, because cooperation of Europeans will continue. I will not bury down their cooperation. The formula which they chosen several years ago and brought them to the situation today should be reconsidered, of course.
So let's pivot to Hillary, but before we do that, one more thing about the EU. The ECB right now, the European Central Bank, is completely on the rocks, and they are pumping out negative yielding bonds at this point, just to keep everything moving. They've gone down to negative interest rates. So that means that the bonds and assets that the bank actually has are costing them more money than they're getting anything. They can't even just sit on bonds at 2% and wait for that to mature. So economically, they are in for a decade of turmoil and stagnation and just horrible things, because this is totally
we shall see about all of that. I think America may face a similar challenge, if not manifested in the same way that you described, but there is hope in for the future. I think that hope is Trump.
Bitcoin. Anyway, so let's role play a little bit. Let's say that one of us is Hillary and the other one's Putin, and we're going to sit down at a table behind closed doors what would that conversation sound like?
Don't forget my medical address.
What would that conversation sound like?
Who you want me to be?
Well, I think that conversation would be tense, Ian, and I'll tell you why. Because I'm not sure if Pat Buchanan, who I love to bring up and who I really respect as a person, but I think one of those commentators that said that Hillary Clinton has effectively, on at least one occasion, referred to Vladimir Putin as a neo-Hitler type character, some sort of deranged power mad dictator.
Oh yeah, he's trying to reform the Soviet Union. Absolutely, that's what he's. So he's a crazy dictator.
You have to think for a minute that those are not. That's not just words that get pumped out into the air. Those words have meaning and they have an impact, and they would certainly color any sort of meeting between the United States, Hillary Clinton, and Vladimir Putin. Negatively, I would say, in terms of simply sitting down to negotiate. I think her comments would cloud any sort of negotiation that would occur in a way that they haven't with Trump.
Absolutely.
See, if we compare Trump on one hand, Hillary on another hand, when Trump first time will meet Putin, there will be nothing in their bags hidden against each other. They expressed only likes of each other. They never really had any history of relations. So they will start from the new clean page. And both will express interests of their countries. Both will say, that's what I want, compare it, and so on. And hopefully productively cooperate, find compromise, mutually satisfactory decisions, and move on. With Hillary, it will be psychologically very difficult. It was so idiotic to compare any Russian leader with Hitler, remembering history of World War and suffering of Soviet people under Nazi occupation and all casualties and almost 30 million people who died in World War II. Any type of comparison will be not met with any positive, of course. Moreover, it will be remembered. First. Second, so-called перезагрузка, reset, that she attempted as Secretary of State, which brought up the conflict in Ukraine eventually. So,
well, it was a hell of a reset.
Previous relations and attempts of cooperation certainly very negative. Of course, Putin is a judo player, and this type of people know how to control their emotions, and he will pretend as a person who doesn't have any negative views, but come on, of course.
Well, I think it's interesting to note that Vladimir Putin is certainly an operator and, as we said, a competent guy. If we think about a Hillary presidency, because as much as I love Trump, I'm never entirely convinced that he could overcome. We'll see. I don't want to make any predictions. But if she does become president, I mean, Hillary Clinton is one mean SOB. She's no slouch herself in terms of conniving and chess, if you will. So, I can only imagine that a meeting like that would be, like you say, filled with sort of duplicitousness on both sides, and not a lot of accomplishments happening.
So, for a second, allow me to parrot the point that the mainstream media is going to respond with. If we're talking about better relations with Putin, it's a win-lose scenario. It's a zero-sum game. If we yield to Russia, then Russia wins and we lose. There's this notion that any sort of capitulation automatically means that Russia's gaining an influence and we are losing influence. And we would like to counter that argument by saying that just because we're dealing with Russia and we're not taking an aggressive posture with Russia does not mean that we will become weaker as a country. I would argue the opposite. And when they do this, when they say these things, they're trying to manipulate you. They're trying to manipulate you.
That might be true, but I think actually, there's probably an element of truth to that. That if we certainly allowing, or sort of recognizing the Crimea as a part of Russia would be a sort of a landmark move, and certainly it would increase the Russians' influence in a certain area of the world. And I would argue why not allow them that influence?
Of course.
What business do we have in Ukraine?
I think that the Russians should invade Mexico and try to set up some sort of anti-American sort of Mexican regime, because I think that's totally within their rights.
I think we should invade Mexico.
And if we push back against them doing that, then we're trying to form the Reich of the American Empire. Of course not. This is ridiculous.
Ian, everybody wins if we invade Mexico. Instead of the Mexicans coming to steal our jobs, why don't we just bring our jobs to them?
Anyway,
if Carrier and Hershey and all those companies are already moving down there, well, why don't we follow them, so to speak?
Alexander, counter the media narrative, please.
Say it again.
Counter the media narrative.
Well, but you're right. What you can say, unfortunately, our vision of the foreign policy is such, and we are going back to where we started. It's again this assumption that we're sole superpower and we never should have compromises with others and we should dictate to the rest of the world how they should be and what they should do. Because in a way we can, it's not exactly the same, but if it is all right for Kosovo to separate from Serbia, actually never even having any referendums there, and we believe it is a very good thing, why Crimea cannot walk away from Ukraine and become a part of Russia. So, but you're absolutely right. The media presentation is such that it is win-lose game, but it is not so. And what is good about Trump that he's saying that. I'm not going to play win and lose game. I'm going to play win-win game when both sides.
Right. And again, I think we've got a little less than 10 minutes left in the program here.
We
I want to talk briefly about not just next time, but also a couple of very interesting things that Trump did this preceding week. And one of them being his concerted black outreach. And his outreach to the black community. I was watching the news this morning, and they had some Methodist church. Mm-hmm. And this is more on the domestic policy, so I think, do you think that would be a sufficient topic for next week, Trump and domestic policy and maybe the identity politics that are occurring?
I thought we would do immigration because I think that that's one of the most polarizing issues.
But it's connected because immigration and African American community very connected topics because there are pretty important connection between these two issues.
So
let's briefly. What is your opinion on his visit and the fact that we understand he didn't reach any agreements and it was not the intention? What is your opinion on his this striking visit to Mexico and
it's PR. I mean, a lot of it is PR. He's trying to defend his image as a guy that gets stuff done and doesn't capitulate to people around him that attempt to push him around. He's going to get the things that he wants in the deal, and he's going to do it with the fewest amount of compromise as possible. And that's why he did what he did. It was more of a PR move than it was him actually trying to go there and do something.
Absolutely.
Well, I agree with that.
He has no power to negotiate anything. But he proved, first, that he can travel and talk to people that he previously used some not so much words to describe. So he's demonstrating that, well, words are words. But when things come to the real business, I will be able to meet with Mexican president and seriously discuss with him all these real issues. Because the immigration, it's a real issue.
Okay, I just want to mention one more thing. Okay, so I think that this comment that I'm reading right here in our Facebook group, I think perfectly sort of encapsulates what a lot of people feel about the two candidates and the situation that we're in. So Andrew Thomas said, both will send our kids to early graves in the Middle East while creating policies that exacerbate the underlying causes of regional strife. Hooray! Okay, obviously a sarcastic hooray there. So there's this notion, and I think that, of course, like usual, the mainstream media is completely responsible for this sort of for this narrative that they keep on pushing. And the narrative that they're using now is that Trump is totally unhinged. Not only is he unqualified, but he's crazy. And he's so clearly racist, and he's a bigot, and he just hates people so much. He wants to build up the military. He wants to attack people. So before we go into this, I want to talk about the Middle East for a little bit, because it is the hot spot right now of the world. So let's see. What was I going to say? I was just going to say something. Somebody pick up the ball. I just fumbled. Michael, go.
Well, the Middle East, Trump's policy on the Middle East is certainly different than Hillary Clinton's in that
Where the money's coming from.
Trump is the master at duality. He can be both a peace candidate and a war hawk. And he seems to embody both of those things. He wants to roll back, I think, our direct, overt involvement in the Middle East. But still, on the other hand, he has this sort of war hawkish side to him that says we're going to bomb the hell out of ISIS. And, you know, when he says that, I certainly believe it.
Well, if you want to defeat ISIS, you need to...
And we will have to do it.
Yeah. You need to destroy their source of income, and most of their income comes from the oil wells that they've captured in that particular region. So if you want to,
I was going to say, are we going to have to engineer another coup in Turkey then?
One more thing, one more line of supply from Saudis and other Gulf monarchies that's supplying not only ISIS but Clinton's foundation.
Right.
And that's another facet to foreign policy. Because you talk about... Well, you were talking... Go ahead.
Yeah, what I'm expecting from Trump in the Middle East, number one, stop regime changes. It is idiotic, it is wrong, it is not working.
And may I interrupt for 1 second?
Stop. We're not going to change any regimes.
One thing that he said about that I think is really great is there was an interview, and I think the question was that, do you think that Iraq would be better if Saddam Hussein was still in power? And his answer was absolutely. Let's look at what has...
today could be much better with Gaddafi than with that man.
Oh, of course, absolutely.
The same story in Ukraine. Most of Ukrainians probably already realized that actually if they had the old president that was overthrown in 2014, now their life will be peaceful and much more prosperous.
Right.
So going back, so no regime change, first. Second, our activity there primarily reflects our economic interests, of course, and we need to do some reconsideration of relations with Saudi Arabia,
yes,
and Gulf monarchies. We should stop issuing blank checks,
yes,
on doing whatever they want to do in the region. We should reconsider seriously relations with Saudi Arabia, because in my opinion this is Saudi Arabia, where many things are rooted in recent problems of the region.
Right. Go ahead.
Well, I would say to that I would be interested to see how a Trump-Saudi meeting would go down. Donald Trump claims he has a lot of friends in the Gulf region, and he probably does. But I think meeting with Mexico's president and meeting with one of the Saudi royal families are two different sort of animals for Trump. I have no doubt that he would be successful in a meeting like that, but still it would be interesting to see how that plays out. Before we go, we have 2 minutes, Ian. I wanted to talk about something that's occurring I believe next
we can
week.
Extend a little bit. It's okay. Go ahead.
Okay, all right, that's fine. Next week, the first, it's not quite a debate, they're calling it a forum on NBC next Wednesday. There will be a forum with Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, moderated by Matt Lauer on NBC. And I want to ask both of you, I suppose, what your thoughts on that debate will look like. Will Hillary show up?
How many bathroom breaks will she take?
Nobody can point here where is her location and what she's doing in the last week.
Well, she's out in Martha's Vineyard. She's out in Chappaqua.
Oh boy.
Which actually I think might be New York. Wherever she's out in one of those compounds out far away. They say that the road in front of her house right now cannot be traversed by the public.
Her health is much more of a serious concern than what a lot of people are saying. She has shown signs recently.
I mean, not to cut you off, but that's another reason why the Mexico visit was so sort of monumental. Because Hillary Clinton is being stashed away in the Hamptons or wherever the hell, while Donald Trump is actually going out and doing these things. I mean, PR move or not PR move, he got in the plane and he flew to Mexico and he met with the president. And the president received him. And I think, you know, power sometimes is
I'm on.
what, you know, 9/10 of the law in terms of exercising it and having the power in this country. And I think Donald Trump, since he started running for president, Donald Trump has been, and this is the sort of amazing thing about him, he has been the guiding force in American policy, directly or indirectly, since he started running for president, since he entered the political realm.
Yes, he's dominating.
That says a lot about him, and it sort of transcends a lot of the media concerns that they address or they vocalize.
So my gut says that, of course, Trump is far more competent than Hillary in a sort of debate forum. However, what I would say is that you should never underestimate the Clintons and the Clinton Foundation, and you know, its squid-like tentacles just wrap around everything. And I guarantee you, any debate structure is going to be rigged against him from the beginning. The questions that they ask, the questions that they ask him, the questions that they ask her, they're going to be lobbing her softballs. I would be amazed if she did anything. If they asked her any seriously difficult question about her emails or anything that they really should be asking her about. You know, the fact she hasn't given a press conference, the fact that she's showing signs of, you know, a little bit of, I don't know, epileptic fits or something like that during high stress situations.
You can bet that Rosie O'Donnell or the words "fat pig" will come up in connection with Donald Trump.
Oh, probably. Absolutely.
They're going to
hammer him on everything. They're going to call him a racist. They're going to call him a sexist. They're going to call him every name in the book. If those words still hold any sway with people, then of course they stand a chance. But the feeling that I'm getting is that people don't respond to those meaningless accusations anymore. Anyway, Alexander, go ahead.
Well, go ahead, Alexander.
Oh, go ahead, Michael.
Okay.
Oh, well, I was going to wind it up. So if you had anything else to say.
Yeah. Okay, we're good. Wow, that was a really good discussion. There's so much to talk about with foreign policy. It's just we could get into everything. We could talk about Brazil. We could talk about Africa. We could talk about China. I think China's the big one that we didn't talk about enough.
What we can do, Ian? Let's ask on our discussion forum in a Facebook.
Sure.
For specific questions from our viewers, our members. So let them not only vote what topic we should discuss, but also submit as concrete and clear questions what they want us to answer about. That will be good communication.
Yeah, I think certainly as people get more involved, more of a Q&A dialogue type thing would be very interesting.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to be extremely busy for the next few weeks, so I'll do my best. But I mean, if you guys want to sort of take that and run with it, that would be fantastic.
Well, who knows? I may be busy the next few weeks too. Alexander, I'll be tracking you down next week, certainly to move forward on that. So,
all right, cool. I'll do everything.
There'll be a lot to talk about. We'll throw everything up on the Facebook page, and I'm going to sign off now. So it was great talking with you as always, and please join us next week.
We'll all sign off. All right, guys. It's been great talking, and we will see you again next week.
Bye-bye.
All right.